Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Robots are increasingly able to do menial labor, from flipping hamburgers, picking lettuce, making cars, to mating with the consequently emasculated men. But there is a meteor of technology heading our way right now that will finally make extinct our corrupt, too-big-to-fail banks and finance dinosaurs. Yes, the Bitcoin meteor is going to smash the fire sector, finance, insurance, real estate. All these middlemen, gone like the dodo, the T-Rex, extinct. Bye, y'all. Stacy?
Max Keiser, we're in 2014, and 2014 is going to show the true power of the blockchain. That is where all of the energy of this meteor called Bitcoin is. Bitcoin 2.0 explained. Colored coins versus Mastercoin versus open transactions versus proto shares. These are just some of the many things that could ride on top of the blockchain, kind of like that guy riding on the missile going to take out there.
Oh, yeah, you know, in the Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
That famous scene at the end where he's riding the bomb down. I think that was Zoot Sims or somebody like that. Was it Phil Sims? No, he runs a suit store. It was Mom's Mabley. No, that wasn't her either.
Well, this is from Kyle Topy, and he is writing on Yahoo, and he's looking at some of the things in 2014 that are going to be more than just the currency app that is Bitcoin. And a lot of people focus on the currency application of Bitcoin because many people only heard about Bitcoin in 2013. So he says, at its core, Bitcoin is a new technology that allows everyone around the world to come to a consensus on who owns what without the use of a centralized third party. There are many different applications that can be built on top of this technology, and Bitcoin is only the first of many apps to come. When you forget about Bitcoin and just look at the technology, there are a large number of new possibilities that jump out at you. For example, if you can have a decentralized ledger that explains who owns which asset, then why do we need centralized stock exchanges? Why do we need domain name registries? Why do we need eBay? All of this could be on the decentralized, that's the technology aspect of it he's looking at in particular in that first section.
Right, absolutely. It's decentralized trust. Anything that requires trust. Lawyers, bankers, domain name registrants, stockbrokers, that can all be put onto the blockchain and get rid of all the middlemen, and the price plunge towards zero, the asymptotic curve to zero. And this, of course, is amazing because most pundits in America, like the Paul Krugmans of the New York Times, they can barely wrap their mind around Bitcoin 1.0.
Yeah.
There's still Joe Wiesenthal, Business Insider, he's still struggling. I'm not sure what Bitcoin is yet. Meanwhile, Bitcoin 2.0 is now ready to go, ready to launch, and set another stage, another chapter on this incredible encryption technology tsunami that is just blasting away all these high-priced middlemen, scoundrels, banksters. Say goodbye. Hello to Bitcoin.
Au revoir. So then he goes in to look at some of the applications already being applied using Bitcoin, the technology, and the blockchain. Colored coins, for example. The main idea behind the Colored Coins project is that you will be able to apply secondary values to certain Bitcoins on the Bitcoin blockchain. Those secondary values can then be used to create completely new digital currencies that are backed by real-world assets. For example, let's say you own some gold at your house. You could hypothetically take 5 Satoshis and say that each one of those Satoshis is equal to 1 gram of the gold that you hold in your home. You could then exchange those 5 Satoshis back by 1 gram of gold each on the decentralized exchange in the Chroma wallet, which is what Colored Coins use. This means that you could instantly exchange gold to Bitcoins, dollars, euros, or any other currency that is created in the Chroma wallet. And you could create stocks in your company in the same exact way. It doesn't have to be gold, it doesn't have to be silver, it could be whatever you want.
Right, you could take a company like Google or Facebook or Netscape or Netflix and take it public on the blockchain. And for a fraction of the cost, nearly zero cost, get rid of all the Wall Street people in the middle. And it's totally transparent. And of course, people who own these currencies can participate in these offerings in ways that they couldn't before because maybe they didn't get in on the IPO because the IPO was given to buddies, and it's all very crony capitalist on the distribution of these things. But with this in place, you have egalitarianism, and you have the ability for a distributed opportunity to take place in ways that the current capitalist model has failed because it got overtaken by kleptocrats. This is also Capitalism 2.0, I should point out, just as it's Bitcoin 2.0. Because Bitcoin 1.0 is monetaryism 2.0, and Bitcoin 2.0 is capitalism 2.0.
And yeah, you remember the DTCC, the Depository Trust Corporation down on Water Street in Manhattan? Remember it was flooded during the recent floods? And it cost millions and millions, billions of dollars to replace those stock certificates.
Let me just jump in here for a second, because you won't be able to do any illegal short selling. You won't be able to engage in naked short selling. Patrick Byrne, who's now taking Bitcoin over at Overstock.com, his company had to fight off an attack by naked short sellers, and he went to battle with the SEC and what's called Reg Show, and we've been following this for years. We'll have him on the show soon. But you wouldn't have that ability, because the way that you can do illegal naked short selling is by saying that somebody sold stock, and we don't have the accounting ability to reconcile that trade with our accounting ledger, and they do that on purpose because they're crooks. But if you use colored coins, you cannot do naked short selling, so Goldman Sachs goes out of business. JP Morgan, who's got a 3 billion ounces short of silver, that would be blown to smithereens. They won't be able to engage in that wholesale fraud anymore.
Yeah, actually, there's another function being deployed right now, a company called Open Transactions, and they started working with gold and digital gold, but here they've now turned to Bitcoin. And Open Transactions no company, whether it's PayPal or JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, for example, will be able to go in and change the number of shares or the amount of money they have on deposit. So it'll get rid of the accounting and the accounting fraud as well, because you won't be able to cook the books using open transactions on the blockchain.
Or take another example, Basel III Accord, which is supposed to be the master agreement for minimum capital requirements for banks. They just came out and said that, well, we're going to make it easier. You don't have to keep so much capital on your books, because that's the collateral you use on your books to then go in through this fractional reserve banking model and create these concatenations of multi-levered pirated pyramid Ponzi schemes. All that gets blown by having true, transparent accounting, totally accountable, and distributed. The total accounting is distributed to everybody on the network. So Basel III, forget Basel III. Everyone will know exactly what the banks own as collateral. Collateral values will be all AAA, because Bitcoin is a AAA credit. Bitcoin is AAA credit. There's only 2 or 3 countries in the world now with a AAA credit. America's not AAA anymore. Most of the Eurozone is frickin' junk. Bitcoin is AAA credit. Think about that, with open, transparent security creation and the ability to wipe out Wall Street with actual securities distributed in an egalitarian manner to give capitalism 2.0. This is fantastic.
So while all those shriekers out there are concentrating only on the price, the exchange rate with the dollar or the euro or the yen or the yuan, so here are people deploying services that are needed and disintermediating out of existence the entire overcompensated banking sector. So one other issue that always arises, people say, well, if you send your Bitcoin to somebody on the other side of the world in exchange for goods and services, you can't, there's no chargeback. So somebody's come up with a solution for that, and that's with master coins, which they're very similar to color coin, but a little bit different. Some of the other exciting features being developed by Mastercoin include a decentralized betting exchange and using contracts for differences to create currencies that don't need to rely on a third party for physical backing. One thing that needs to be pointed out about the Mastercoin protocol is the Mastercoins on that layer also have their own value separate from Bitcoins. This means that Mastercoin is also an altcoin. There are some interesting features that are being added to the Mastercoin protocol, such as the ability to mark certain Mastercoins in a savings account where payments can be reversed if they are made without the address holder's permission.
Let me jump in here for a second, because people will say, oh, those sounds like derivatives, and it sounds like you don't like derivatives, but now you're saying, well, Bitcoin derivatives are okay. Let me make a very important point here. The derivatives that exist today, the ones that say JP Morgan are involved with $90 trillion worth off-balance sheet derivatives, they're collateralized by derivatives. They're collateralized by mark-to fantasy accounting. They're collateralized by whatever some big 4 accounting firm says the collateral is worth, and we know that they're all corrupt and commit massive fraud. They're all engaged in a daisy chain of fraud. There is no collateral. What you just described are derivatives. And the derivatives are derived from the AAA credit that is Bitcoin, that is as solid as gold, that is digital gold, and therefore it's a AAA credit, and therefore these derivatives are permissible in the sense that they derive their value from something that has a stated, known, unequivocal value. Not like any of the derivatives today. They have no value because they're not tied to anything that's not already been rehypothecated 1,000 times, going back to 1971 when the world went off gold and went into this fantastical experiment of having no currency collateralized by anything that anyone had any basis for.
And now one of the other Bitcoin 2.0 things they're coming up with are decentralized autonomous corporations. So you can see in the name what is out there. This is just the 2014 Bitcoin 2.0. There's also Bitcoin 3.0 and 4.0 to emerge after that. Now, another thing that is using the blockchain is a completely sort of innovative new way, not even financial related. This is information related. Out in the open, an NSA-proof Twitter built with code from Bitcoin and BitTorrent. So following the mass protests in Brazil, this guy, Miguel Freitas, went to Twitter to find information because he knew that the Brazilian press was, in the pockets of the politicians, and they were all friends, and they were only going to report what they wanted to report. So he went to Twitter, and he found his news there. But then the NSA revelations came out, and he got afraid that, well, this is going to be compromised by the NSA and the US security state. So he's come up with, his alternative is called Twister. It's a decentralized social network that, in theory, can't be shut down by any one entity. What's more, Twister is designed to prevent other users from knowing whether you're online, what your IP address is, or who you follow. You could still post public messages a la Twitter, but when you send direct and private messages to others, they're protected with the same encryption scheme used by LavaBit, the email provider used by Edward Snowden. So, of course, he's using the Bitcoin blockchain, and he's also using BitTorrent technology. He's in Brazil, so he doesn't have this problem of being patriotic to the NSA, a fear of committing treason. He's being patriotic and giving over the information, like LavaBit was forced to do.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, and we're not talking about Frank Zappa. Clearly, their pursuit of happiness, which is codified in the founding documents of the United States of America, has been thwarted by the NSA and their corporate handlers who are looking to bankrupt anyone they can and bring slavery back after it was outlawed many years ago. Invention, using Bitcoin, is now bringing happiness back. What is happiness? It's the freedom from feeling or being afraid. It's the freedom from fear. That's what happiness is all about. That's what Bitcoin is giving us. It's a AAA credit that you can do derivatives on, knowing that you're deriving value from something that we know what it's worth. That's freedom from fear. That's the pursuit of happiness. That's the ability to kick the NSA in the nuts and say, get out of my life, you scumbag. All right, we got to go.
Okay, Max.
Stay right there. Plenty more coming your way.
Millions around the globe struggle with hunger each day. What if someone offers a lifetime food supply, no charge?
We in the church have taken a very strong position against GMO, and we think that these genetically modified products are a risk to health.
There is no evidence that there's any problem with genetic engineering.
Would you make a deal? Or is free cheese always in a mousetrap?
I don't believe that that's for forever free. Their primary motive is profit, not for humanity, not for social justice.
Golden Rice on RT.
My name's Daniel Bushell.
Tom Urban in Washington, D.C.
Banking new policies.
Consider I'm Peter LaBelle. A pleasure to have you with us here on RT today. I'm Rory Susham.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to New York. Speak with Reggie Middleton of the BoomBustBlog.com. Reggie, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Well, thank you. And as usual, very good to be back. Love your show.
All right, Reggie Middleton, you are building what you call a virtual Goldman Sachs on top of Bitcoin. Tell us about it.
Well, a virtual Goldman Sachs on top of the Bitcoin and protocol and network sans the extreme conflicts of interest and the excessive bonus compensation. Sort of long. So basically, I'm building a more efficient financial system.
Right. So in other words, you represent what some are calling Bitcoin 2.0. First, we had Bitcoin introduced to the world a few years ago. It has now become a mechanism for payment on the internet with Overstock.com, for example, accepting it as a payment method and as a currency. Now you're taking it to the next level, which is to say that individual Bitcoins themselves can be used to launch what are effectively derivatives, correct?
Right, derivatives in the purest sense. Remember, a derivative is simply an instrument that derives its value from something else, not necessarily, some Frankenstein monster. But it can be if conflicts of interest causes the two parties to spread away from each other in terms of actual interest. What I'm doing with Bitcoin initially is I'm creating mechanisms to smooth out the volatility and allow people to take positions on it. For instance, Overstock.com, the CEO made a very interesting and apparently very good decision to accept Bitcoin. He got, I think, $130,000 worth of orders, over 840 orders, almost all new orders, all new customers, and this is in the first day. That's actually very good business, good decision. But when he gets that in, he accepts Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still very volatile. So either he has to try and exchange all that for US dollars or he has to ride the volatility out. Even if it ends up going higher, the volatility is it's very dangerous. Makes you nosebleed as a CEO. So what my products do is it allows him to take that exposure and hedge it. So he could lock into a US dollar value with his Bitcoins, or euro value, Japanese yen, Chinese renminbi, any of over a dozen fiat currencies. That's one of the things. We can also make virtual letters of credit. We can actually exchange real estate through the Bitcoin network. The sky's the limit. And the reason we could do all this is because cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are intelligent currencies. They're programmable. I can tell it to do something. I can make a contract off the currencies that basically enforce an agreement between 2 or 3 or more parties. And once I give you my Bitcoin, you can't spend it until we mutually agree upon something, and that mutual agreement is then executed. Unlike the dumb dollar or the dumb fiat currency, where if I take a dollar bill, I give it to you, that's it. And the only way to get it back, I have to ask for it back or I have to fight over it.
Right. Some have referred to Bitcoin as distributed trust. And what that means is when you apply it to the banking model or the stockbroker model, is that people go to banks and brokers to be the intermediary, to be the fiduciary, to be the trust, to do things like take a company public through an IPO, or to create a letter of credit, or to create a derivative as you speak about, because they have a reputation, they have some trust in this equation. But what we've seen over the years is that they've abused that trust. And into this abusive vacuum, Bitcoin has emerged. And by having distributed trust, you don't need these bankers anymore, because all of the transactions, all of the records of the transaction are in the ledger that is part and parcel with every single transaction. And it becomes what you call a smart currency. But I want to just talk a little bit about something you just said. You mentioned that these are derivatives, but they are real derivatives that are derived their value from something of true value. And we talked about this in the first half of the show. In other words, in the case of the current derivative market, the value, it derives from other derivatives. So you have an enormous Ponzi scheme. There is no more gold in the equation anymore. Derivatives are referring to other derivatives. But this generation of derivatives that you're talking about with what you're introducing would be deriving their value from Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has unimpeachable intrinsic value, correct?
Correct. There's a lot of discussion on Bitcoin and whether it has any value. A lot of people say it's just bits and bytes. There's a lot of misunderstanding. I approach Bitcoin actually late to the game, but I did it as a true student. No preconceived notions, biases, prejudices. I simply looked at it, and I really liked what I saw. What Bitcoin does, number one, its primary value is the fact that it allows you, or its value to me, is that it allows you to totally circumvent the money center banks and the central banks. You know, that's very valuable. A lot of people look at the actual Bitcoins as a currency and ignore the transmission network. An analogy that I often use is a car. You have the dollar, which is, say, a Chevrolet, and it's, you know, $30,000. Then you have the Bitcoin, which was 2 cents last year, and now it's $100,000 now. And people look at the Bitcoin and say, but it's a bubble, it's overpriced, it's a Ponzi scheme, et cetera, et cetera. But that car, that Bitcoin car, comes with its own roads, and those roads have no tolls and no bridges, so you don't have to pay any fees to travel the roads, and the roads could go anywhere in the world, overseas and over countries, through rivers, anywhere there's an internet connection, and that car could go faster than all the other cars in the world. And there's no way those roads could be impeded by any government whatsoever, or any military, or any corporation. So, taking that into consideration, which is more valuable, that Chevrolet or that car that went from 2 cents to $100,000? So, you have to look at Bitcoin as it is and not as it's portrayed in the media or by its detractors or proponents, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, people must do their own homework and check it out more thoroughly. But I think the point is, when people talk about Bitcoin being the equivalent of gold, I think they are making a great point. And here in London, we now have Lloyd's of London offering cold storage of Bitcoin, insured cold storage. Goldmoney.com is now offering a cold storage service for Bitcoin, making the equivalency to gold as something with inherent intrinsic value. But I want to talk a little bit more about the tech space in general, because the last time you were on the show, Reggie, you were very excited about Google Glass. Now, since you came on the show, and we asked you about it at the time, the NSA revelations through the Snowden reveals have been quite damning for products like Google Glass and others. People are saying, I don't want to wear Google Glass because I'm effectively spying for the NSA. So I'm wondering what your current position is on that technology. It seems as though you've pivoted into Bitcoin from Google Glass. Is that a correct characterization, or am I missing something? Your thoughts?
No, I'm just I'm riding a technology wave as it develops. I'm still very bullish with Google Glass. Anybody who feels that they're spying for the NSA by wearing Google Glass, A, probably never wore Google Glass, and B, should take their cell phone and destroy it and flush it down the toilet, and should never walk by a bank or a liquor store or a department store, stay at a Macy's. Don't go near the corners in New York City. You know, the NSA is a spy agency for the most powerful nation in the world. They spy, that's what they do. Any device that's connected to the network is potentially vulnerable. As a matter of fact, any device that's not connected to the network that could still be physically taken is vulnerable. You know, keep that in mind. What Google Glass does is it enables you to actually spy back. You know, and if you wear glass, you realize you have significantly enhanced observational powers and recording powers and transmission powers. Now, whether those powers could be intercepted by a spy agency, possibly, but no more than anybody with an iPhone. So if you're anti-Google Glass, it's understandable, but you know, be aware you're also anti-iPhone and anti-Samsung Galaxy 4, anti-flip phone, etc. So, you know, the weakness of Google Glass is that it's connected to a network. There's security in there, but the NSA's job is to hack security. That's what they do.
All right, let's stick on this idea for a second, because the NSA revelations pertaining to, the Snowden revelations pertaining to the NSA have then led to companies like IBM and Cisco. Sales in around the world have crashed. In China, they've tumbled. Boeing lost out on a fighter jet deal with Brazil, a multi-billion-dollar deal. So in other words, the economics of spying, and I'm talking to you as a businessman here, not as somebody who might have an insight into the politics, but just as a businessman, the politics of spying is biting America in the ass, because these big tech companies are now losing huge deals as a result of this invasive spying. How can the companies justify the fall of market share in America with technology that nobody wants? It's proven to be completely ineffective, and it's killing sales overseas. As a businessman, Reggie, what are your thoughts?
Well, if it's completely ineffective and nobody wants it, then the market's supposed to fall. That's called finance and economics. That's the natural course of things. The NSA spying has been a constant, I think, since the birth, the genesis of NSA. The only difference, the only delta is that it's been made public through, Snowden and Snowden's revelations. And, his revelations weren't much of a revelation. The specific things that he released, were educational to me, but it's not as if I was surprised. Again, the NSA is a spy agency. They spy, and they don't spy if you like them or if they like you. They strong-arm all organizations. So I doubt very seriously, and I don't have an insider track, but I'm using his common sense here, the noggin. I doubt very seriously if they're just pushing on Google or just pushing on Microsoft. Any large corporate entity that has access to a large amount of data, the NSA has compromised, either voluntarily with the company's permission or by force.
Let's let me kind of circle back to Bitcoin for a second, because as you pointed out with Google Glass, the NSA is spying on you, but in turn you're spying on them. So you're hinting at this idea of a pushback. And Bitcoin certainly gives people who are not happy with the current way the banking system is being organized, gives them a way to push back. And they are doing so with initiatives like your initiative. Do you think at some point there's going to be more of a pointed response from, let's say, the central bankers, the Janet Yellen's now at the Federal Reserve Bank? Not only does Bitcoin disintermediate Goldman Sachs, but it also disintermediates the Federal Reserve Bank of America. Are these bankers, these big bankers, are they going to push back against Bitcoin? Do you see that happening? We've got about 30 seconds.
Yes, they have. Allegedly, J.P. Morgan has created their own derivative of Bitcoin, their own offshoot. They forked Bitcoin, but it's a centralized system as opposed to a decentralized system, which Bitcoin is peer-to-peer. So J.P. Morgan has a server that tries to do everything that Bitcoin does. Of course, they own the server. The problem is they attempted to patent it, and they attempted to patent it 175 times. 155 of those times it was rejected. With prejudice. In other words, they couldn't come back. And if I'm not mistaken, the last 20 times it was rejected without prejudice, which meant I think they can refile. But the problem is they should never be given a patent, because Bitcoin has been up and running for at least 4 years.
All right, fair enough. Reggie, thanks so much for being back on the Keiser Report.
Very welcome.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I'd like to thank my guest, Reggie Middleton of BoomBustBlog.com. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.